How emotion neglect creates devastating impact in your marriage. Hi friends, welcome to Marriage Realities, a comprehensive relationship channel. Today's video is all about how emotion neglect meted out to you by a spouse makes you feel pained and devastated. The emotion neglect you experience in your married life pulverizes you in many ways. This negative aspect of your relationship is that draining to you emotionally, psychologically, and mentally. What exactly does emotion neglect mean in a marriage? Basically, your relationship with your spouse is highly emotional and sensitive. Emotions rule your relationship. You want to feel loved by your spouse. You want to feel protected by your spouse. You want to confide all your feelings with your spouse. You want your spouse to make you feel that you mean a lot to him or her, so that you can feel emotionally content being married to your spouse. But mostly, your spouse does not make you feel emotionally fulfilled. Rather, time and again, your emotions are neglected by the carelessness of your spouse. Your spouse goes about his or her life without making you feel loved or emotionally protected. When your spouse does not make you enjoy emotional well-being, you feel completely neglected in your married life. Your spouse might not abuse you physically or verbally, but still you can feel emotionally neglected by your spouse. It is because there's nothing in the behavior of your spouse to show that he or she loves you. When your spouse acts as though you do not exist to him or her, you feel emotionally neglected. When you experience emotional neglect in your married life, you are mentally upset and devastated. Emotional neglect makes you feel absolutely lonely in your married life, even when your spouse is physically present with you. This unwanted characteristic of your married life makes you feel so distant from your spouse that he or she seems like a stranger to you. The behavior of your spouse is so unlike the person you loved and cherished. When there's no emotional connection between you and your spouse, everything about your married life becomes listless and loveless. Shall we have a glimpse at the ways your spouse emotionally neglects you? Many a time your spouse is non-communicative when you so want to interact with him or her. And if at all your spouse interacts with you, he or she looks all over the place instead of focusing his or her attention on you. You might be under tremendous stress, but your spouse pays scant attention to your problems. As your spouse lives in his or her own world, silence prevails in your home. There might be no arguments between you, but you do not feel happy about it. It is because you know that you find it impossible to argue with your spouse as you have become completely disconnected from each other. There is no real emotional intimacy between you, that both do not confide your personal problems and emotions with each other. How can you ever enjoy a married life when such a scenario existed between you? Of course, you do not enjoy a relationship with your spouse. You can enjoy a relationship with your spouse only when there is mutual support and care between you. When there's nothing of this emotional caring in your married life, you only feel emotionally neglected and abused by your spouse. Shall we have a glimpse into the emotional neglect your husband delivers to you? As a woman, your family means the world to you. You love your husband so much that you want to share all your feelings and emotions with him. You want your husband to listen to your feelings with empathy. You want your husband to display his love for you openly and frankly. You want your husband to be appreciative about your relentless contribution towards your family. You want your husband to be protective and supportive towards you. These are some of the basic womanly expectations you have about your husband. But unfortunately, nothing of your expectations materializes as your husband lives in his own personal space without spending time with you. Your husband would rather be glued to the TV or playing video games than spend loving moments with you. When you eagerly go to interact with your husband, he scarcely looks at you. His eyes are on his mobile or laptop that you feel you might as well be talking with the furniture for all the attention he gives you. Your husband gives importance to his family and friends rather than to you. You're emotionally devastated when your husband never makes you his priority. Your husband never for once appreciates you, as he takes it for granted that it is your duty to look after him and his family. Whenever your husband is at home, he does not interact with you. He is glued to his TV or laptop. Your husband often criticizes you with the deliberate intention of hurting you. Your husband finds fault in whatever you do. Many a time your husband lazes around while you slog all alone with your never-ending household chores. He also makes derisive comments about your appearance. You're emotionally shattered when the person who means the world to you silently abuses you. The uncaring attitude of your husband makes you feel very unhappy in your married life. Constant emotional neglect meted out to you by your husband makes you withdraw away from him in anger and bitterness. Now, shall we see how a wife emotionally neglects her husband? Basically, you as a man never display your emotions as openly as your wife does. But this does not mean you're wooden and without feelings. Though you show yourself as being practical and grounded, you too have certain needs which you want your wife to fulfill. You want your wife to understand you from your viewpoint. You want your wife to respect you for what you are. You want your wife to understand that you need your own personal space. You often want your wife to be encouraging towards your talent. You want your wife to resist from comparing you with other successful people. But invariably, you're utterly disappointed when your wife is in exact contrast to your male expectations. Many a time, your wife nags you threadbare about your ineptness to deal with family problems that you feel you're no good for your family. Your wife leeches onto you in the name of love that you feel suffocated by lack of your personal space. You're highly irritated when your wife treats sex as a bargaining ground to fulfill her needs. Your wife compares you in a lesser light with her more successful relatives or colleagues. Your wife spends hours in the mobile completely ignoring your presence at home. You're disappointed when your wife never encourages your talent. In fact, she demoralizes you by uttering insulting words about your ability. So, both are equally to be blamed for emotional neglect in your married life. Unless you understand the feelings of each other, you cannot experience true happiness in your married life. Did this video make you understand the devastating impact of emotional neglect in your married life? Marriage Realities will have many such relationship eye-openers. Subscribe to my channel to understand your marriage in a new light. Press the bell icon for updates about my latest relationship videos. Make love forever until death do us part your relationship goal.